Monstera Deliciosa, otherwise known as the Swiss cheese plant or the salad plant, is one of those plants that a lot of us go gaga over because of those splits and holes in the leaves called fenestrations and perforation. So we want to set up a Monstera for success so the leaves don't get squashed, so that our Monstera doesn't grow all over the place and look like a total mess. The first of all is that Monstera is an aeroid type of plant, which means that it produces roots on the stems, and these roots on the stem called aero roots. What happens is that in the tropical rainforest, the Monstera uses these aero roots to attach to surrounding trees and helps it climb upwards on the trees so that the Monstera can actually gain more sunshine and help it thrive better. So we want to facilitate our plant to encourage our Monstera to grow upwards. And the climbing support, you can use different climbing supports. I happen to like moss pole more, but you can use other ones. You can use Coco coir, you can use like planks of wood, you can just use other trellises to help your Monstera climb. And we need to actually attach the Monstera to the actual climbing support, and we need to know what is the front of the Monstera and the back of the Monstera, because we want to make sure that the leaves are actually growing outwards and not inwards towards the climbing pole. To tell which way is which, well, the front of the Monstera is where the leaves grow outwards. And so this one here, this is the front of the Monstera, and at the back of the Monstera, this is where mainly the aero roots grow out. And no matter how much you rotate your Monstera, this is still going to happen. It's not going to change. It has a front where the leaves grow out of it, and at the back where more the aero roots grow out of it. So you want to attach the aero roots to the climbing pole. You can see this Monstera. Can you see what's wrong with it? It is a pot that it has a few Monstera in it, but you can see that most of them, the back is attached to the climbing pole, which happens to be a Coco coir, and there's one that's actually not. There's one stem that's actually the front is attached to the Coco coir, which means that when the leaves grow out of it, it's going to hit the actual climbing pole and the leaves can become damaged or squashed. So let's fix it. Let's turn this stem and actually move it to the front of the actual climbing pole, so then that way the leaves are actually growing the right direction. Now, when it comes to the Monstera, we also want to use a climbing pole that's not really in the center of the pot, but more at the back of the pot. And the reason for that is that if we use a climbing pole that's at the very center, the space at the back of the pole is kind of being wasted, and you can use that extra space and put the climbing pole at the back so the leaves have more room to actually spread out at the front of the plant. Now this Monstera here, it's actually not a good Monstera to grow or to actually choose if you're in the nursery, because you can see it's been planted. There's multiple plants in the pot, but the actual leaves are growing, well, the different plants are growing in different directions, which means that we would need several different climbing poles to actually support each Monstera. And so what's going to happen is that we'll either use different climbing poles, or we actually repot the plant and rearrange the plants so that all the backs are to the climbing pole. And I don't know about yourself, but for myself, with my Monstera, I generally just want one climbing pole, which makes it look neater, and also I want them all facing in the one direction. Most of us don't have a household where the actual where we grow our Monstera, where it's receiving 360 degrees of equal lighting. We generally have one light source, which is the main light source from a window in the room. And so we want our plants to grow towards that direction, the leaves facing that direction there, so that the Monstera can gain as much sunlight as possible and not have the back to the actual light source. So it's like if we were in a party. If we're in a party there, we want to be facing the party and having a good time, and we don't want our backs turned away from the party, because who's going to talk to us if our backs away from the party and facing the corner of the room or towards the wall? So this one here, what I've done is I've used a climbing pole, which is a moss pole, and I haven't filled it all the way up because this Monstera is still on the smaller side, so the extra moss in the moss pole is just going to go to waste for the moment, and I'll fill it up once the plant grows more. Now this Monstera there, you can see the roots are at the back and the leaves are at the front. So the only thing about this plant, because it's a smaller plant, the actual stem wasn't that long, so I couldn't just naturally attach the actual Aeroid directly onto the moss pole, but you can see the roots are growing in towards the moss pole, so this encourages the actual plant to grow more towards the moss pole. The other part is I had to use one of the leaves and the stem of the leaf called a petiole to attach it to the moss pole. This is not the most ideal condition because you want more the actual main stem to attach to the climbing support rather than a petiole. Now this one here, if I use this petiole to attach it to the moss pole, it's going to be a mistake and it's going to cause problems in the long term. The reason for this is this leaf here is actually the newest leaf, and what Monsteras generally do is that when one leaf grows, the actual new leaf tends to grow out of the previous leaf, not the older leaf. So this is the latest leaf, and you can see there's another leaf growing out of this leaf, which is the newest leaf. And if I attach that to the actual climbing pole, the leaf can become damaged, and that can result to the damage of the newest leaf growing out. Where if I attach an older leaf petiole to the actual climbing support, there's less risk of future damage to future leaves. So I reattached it, so I used this second oldest leaf and I attached that petiole to the climbing support. Now when it comes to how to arrange your Monstera, so like I mentioned before, I popped the climbing support at the back of the pot. I actually plant the Monstera to the front or the sides of the plant. If you have only one Monstera, plant it to the very front of the climbing support. If you have multiple plants in the pot, then plant it so that it's on the sides as well, and not to plant it at the very back of the moss pole, and making sure that it's facing out, the leaves are facing outwards, so the front of the plants are out and the back of the Monstera is attached to the moss pole. So these things help the Monstera be set up so that you avoid things like leaves being squashed and the Monstera growing into a mess. If you do enjoy this content, don't forget to like and subscribe the channel, because I have noticed that 90% of my viewers are not subscribers. So if you could support me and helping to grow this channel, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And for those returning subscribers, thank you so much for your continued support and watching the video. If you want to know how to actually make sure that your Monstera grows, watch this video here where I give you further tips on how to create a Monstera and prevent it from becoming dormant. I'll see you there in the next video.